The second part of your question, you're absolutely right. For us, it's very important, the process of integrations in other parts of the world. The African Union. We as UNASUR, we were going to have last Thursday a meeting of UNASUR and the Arab League that's called ASA. It was going to be a summit in Lima. But because of all what is happening in Arab countries, we have had to postpone that until some months. But the integration between process of integration in the South, in developing countries, is key. We have the same with the African Union. And for us to develop that and to develop the experience between them, it's very important. We learn very much. For example, one thing from the African Union that I like is very much that they are around 50 nations that have a very strong position in relation to the Security Council in the UN. And they are asking for 2 seats as permanent members with veto power in the reform of the Security Council. It's not easy to get that, but to have a unity in relation to this in front of other players that have had that power, the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, is something that everybody has to learn about. Very important. And in many other aspects too.
We have time for one more very brief question. And I see a persistent hand. Sorry, persistent hand right on the aisle there.
My question is very short. Could you please talk a little bit about U.S.-Bolivia relation, please?
U.S. It's a very short question.
Without the use of explicatives or mentioning the CIA.
And you note that I refrained from asking you that question.
Until the end. Sorry that I cannot be so short in the answer because it's a very complicated, because we have a very complicated relation with the U.S. That is true. It's the only country where we don't have ambassadors. The U.S. doesn't have ambassador in Bolivia, we don't have ambassador in the U.S. We have diplomatic relations. Why is this? Because the relation with the U.S. has been a relation of intervention of the U.S. in internal affairs of Bolivia during the past decades. Very strong. If you wanted to be a minister in Bolivia of a government, you had to have the green light of the American embassy. And that was not something that I say. You had it in the press. We had an ambassador of the U.S. that went into the media saying, if you vote for Evo Morales, you're going to be penalized. We're going to cut the aid. He did it publicly. When President Morales won the elections, inside Bolivia we had some rockets that our army had and had bought from China. I don't know how many, 10, 15, something like that. And suddenly, nobody knows why, with which authorization, the US came, took those missiles and brought them here, disarmed them, and brought them back to Bolivia. So there is a problem with the US. Now, our policy, we want to have good relations with the US. For us, what does good relations mean? We have to respect ourselves. And respect means, I don't want to intervene in your internal affairs, but you can intervene into my internal affairs. When we arrived to the presidency, there was an office of the agency in the presidency. And that was something that all the presidents knew that. And that's not possible.
Why are you pointing to me?
Because you were saying, do not speak about the CIA. So those are the problems. So I think that if we manage, we are now in the process of negotiating what we call a framework agreement for cooperation. We think that if this moves forward, we will have a new framework agreement that the basis is respect for the sovereignty of each country and to respect the decisions of each one. That any kind of aid that comes, the government knows that it's coming, and that we all can decide if there is any aid to Bolivia, where this aid is best to be used. So we hope that in the coming months we will have a real improvement in these relations between Bolivia and the U.S.
Please join me in thanking Ambassador Solôn for joining us this evening.